You think GPS disruption is just a technical inconvenience, just a signal problem, just a temporary glitch on a screen. But it's not. It's a warning that the world you trusted to guide you can go silent the moment pressure gets real. You think electronic warfare in the region is about machines confusing machines, experts arguing over frequencies, operators fixing maps, soldiers checking devices. But that's the shallow version. The real version is harder. It is a fight over orientation itself. A fight over whether you still know where you are when the guidance disappears. And if you need that kind of truth in your ear instead of soft commentary, subscribe now, because you do not need more content. You need reminders. You need to hear reality often enough that your mind stops crawling back toward convenience, illusion, and borrowed certainty. You need clarity when the world starts shaking the systems you mistook for guarantees. Here's what it really means. Electronic warfare disrupting GPS systems in the region is not just interference with navigation. It is the deliberate attack on confidence, timing, coordination, and trust in invisible structure. That is the real meaning. It is not only about where you are. It is about whether you can still function when the thing you leaned on without thinking suddenly fails you. Most people don't understand that because they are trapped in the oldest weakness there is. They think guidance is the same thing as wisdom. They think having a signal is the same thing as having direction. They think if the map is talking, then they are in control. No. You are not in control because something external is feeding you coordinates. You are in control when you can stay effective even when the feed gets corrupted, jammed, manipulated, delayed, or stripped away completely. That's the misconception. The misconception is that convenience equals competence. It does not. The hard truth is this: the more dependent you become on external systems for orientation, the less you notice your own internal weakness. And that is exactly why GPS disruption matters, because it exposes a brutal fact most people spend their lives avoiding. When the signal drops, all that remains is what you actually are. Your discipline, your training, your backup, your composure, your ability to think clearly without being handheld by a machine. That's called exposure. And exposure is merciless. It does not care what you intended. It does not care how modern you feel. It does not care how advanced your equipment looked 5 minutes ago. If your movement, timing, coordination, and confidence depend too heavily on one fragile stream of guidance, then a disruption does not merely inconvenience you, it reveals you. This is why electronic warfare is so psychologically violent, even when it looks quiet from the outside. No massive explosion, no dramatic cinematic collapse, just uncertainty, delay, misdirection, friction, routes becoming questionable, coordinates becoming suspect, systems disagreeing, decisions taking longer, people second-guessing what they thought they knew. That is how confusion enters, not always with fire, often with doubt, and doubt spreads fast. It spreads through operations, through command, through logistics, through tempo, through trust. Once GPS becomes unreliable, movement changes, targeting changes, timing changes, safety margins change, communication patterns change, confidence changes. Suddenly, the machine that promised precision becomes a source of hesitation. And hesitation in conflict is expensive, very expensive. But to really understand it, you need to ask the harder question: why does this happen? Why is disrupting GPS so attractive in the first place? Because it is efficient. Because modern systems are deeply interconnected. Because if you can distort orientation, you don't need to destroy everything physically to degrade performance. You don't need to level every road if you can make the route uncertain. You don't need to kill every capability if you can poison timing, spacing, synchronization, and trust. That's the root cause. It is not random chaos. It is strategic pressure aimed at dependency. And dependency is always the real target. A weak mind hears that and thinks, so the technology is bad. Wrong again. The problem is not technology itself. The problem is worship. The problem is over-reliance. The problem is the delusion that because a system is advanced, it is invulnerable. Because a tool is convenient, it is permanent. Because a network is usually present, it will always be present when you need it most. That's called technological complacency, and it ruins people. It ruins organizations. It ruins nations. You see it everywhere. A man depends on motivation instead of discipline. Then the feeling disappears, and so does he. A business depends on easy conditions instead of strong systems. Then pressure arrives and the cracks appear. A military force depends on uninterrupted precision and clean guidance. Then electronic warfare enters the room and suddenly the truth gets louder than the equipment. The truth is simple. Anything you rely on can become a point of attack. Anything you stop respecting can become a point of failure. Anything you fail to back up can become a source of humiliation. Read that again in your bones. Anything you rely on can become a point of attack. That is not paranoia. That is adulthood. And adulthood is what this subject demands. Not panic, not drama, not fantasy. Adulthood. Serious people understand that electronic warfare disrupting GPS systems is not merely a technical event. It is a test of whether the people using those systems built real competence behind the convenience. A test of whether the operator still knows how to navigate without the crutch. A test of whether command can still function when certainty becomes foggy. A test of whether the system had redundancy, discipline, cross-checking, and human toughness built into it before the signal ever started failing. That's called resilience. Not posting about resilience, not talking about resilience, building it. And the cost of not building it is brutal. It costs time. It costs tempo. It costs trust between units and systems. It costs operational efficiency. It costs safety. It costs precision. It costs morale. It costs attention, because now people are fighting the confusion as much as they are fighting the enemy. It costs confidence, because once you realize the signal can lie, every readout becomes suspect. And the deepest cost of all is this. It teaches your enemy how dependent you really are. That is the part weak people never want to think about. Every successful disruption is not just interference. It is feedback for the attacker. It tells them what slows you down, what rattles you, what you lean on too hard, how fast you adapt, where your discipline ends and your dependency begins. It becomes a live test of your true competence under pressure. That's called forced honesty. And forced honesty offends people who built their self-image on convenience, because convenience lets you look capable without becoming capable. Convenience lets you move fast without learning depth. Convenience lets you mistake assistance for mastery. Then pressure comes, then the support gets jammed, then the correction signal vanishes. Then reality asks a simple, humiliating question. Who are you without the help? Can you still think? Can you still move? Can you still lead? Can you still decide? Or were you just being carried by an invisible hand the entire time? That question is bigger than war, bigger than the region, bigger than GPS. It is about you, because this is how life exposes a man too. Not always with catastrophe, sometimes with silence, sometimes with missing guidance, sometimes with the sudden disappearance of the thing that used to tell you what to do, where to go, how to feel, what to trust, who to be. And when that happens, your real structure shows up. Or your lack of structure does. You stop pretending that dependence is strength. You stop calling comfort stability. You stop confusing access with ability. Presence versus drift. Orientation versus confusion. Reality versus fantasy. That is the real binary. And the man who understands this lives differently. He does not romanticize self-reliance in some childish, loud, performative way. He is not the fool saying he needs nothing. He is smarter than that. He uses systems. He values tools. He respects technology. But he never kneels to them. He does not let convenience hollow out capability. He keeps an internal compass. He keeps standards. He trains under friction, not only under ideal conditions. He thinks in layers, backup for backup, method beyond method, signal plus judgment, tool plus discipline. He has boundaries, which means he does not let every external disruption become internal collapse. He has purpose, which means he knows what he serves, even when the route gets unclear. He is grounded, which means he does not panic when the screen gets noisy. He returns to fundamentals. He observes, he cross-checks, he slows down enough to become accurate again. He has self-respect, which means he does not outsource all orientation to external validation, external systems, external convenience, external permission. That man is steady. He does not become arrogant when tools work. He does not become helpless when tools fail. He does not worship the signal. He does not fear the silence. He can function in both. That's the archetype. The person who embodies the solution is not the loudest voice screaming about collapse, not the most dramatic commentator, not the man addicted to fear because fear makes him feel significant. No, it is the man whose internal order is strong enough that external disruption does not instantly own him. He respects complexity without dissolving inside it. He adapts without whining. He recalibrates without ego. He doesn't complain that the world is unfair because the system failed him. He asks a harder question. What should have been built in me, in the process, in the team, in the structure, so that this failure would not own the outcome? That is self-respect at a high level. Not pride, not chest beating, not fake toughness. Real self-respect. The kind that says, I do not wait for the world to stay easy before I become serious. That's why this subject matters so much. Electronic warfare disrupting GPS systems in the region is a live lesson in the danger of untested dependence. It shows you that modern life often works beautifully right up until the moment someone intelligent decides to interfere. And then all the hidden assumptions come to the surface. The assumption that the route would stay accurate. The assumption that timing would remain synchronized. The assumption that systems would keep agreeing. The assumption that precision would stay available. The assumption that someone else had already accounted for failure. That's called borrowed certainty. And borrowed certainty is one of the most dangerous addictions there is, because it feels like confidence without requiring preparation. It feels like safety without requiring skill. It feels like order without requiring discipline. Then the environment changes, and suddenly you find out you were never standing on bedrock. You were standing on uninterrupted service. You need to hear that clearly. A lot of people are only confident because nothing has interrupted them yet. That is not strength. That is untested dependency. So what do you do with this? First, stop romanticizing seamless systems. Respect them. Yes. Use them. Yes. But stop acting like smooth performance means permanent reliability. It doesn't. Smooth performance often just means no one has stressed the system hard enough yet. Second, stop thinking disruption equals defeat. That's weak thinking. Disruption is pressure. Pressure reveals quality. Pressure reveals gaps. Pressure reveals where training was shallow, where assumptions were lazy, where arrogance replaced preparation. If you treat every disruption like the end, you were never built for reality in the first place. Third, redirect your attention from convenience to capability. Ask yourself what still functions when assistance weakens, what remains when the guidance fades, what principles survive when the interface stops reassuring you. That is where real strength lives. Fourth, train yourself to respect redundancy, not just in war, in your life, in your thinking, in your habits, in your plans. The disciplined person has alternatives, different paths, different methods, different checks. He does not gamble everything on one perfect stream of support. He prepares for friction because he understands that friction is not an accident. It is part of reality. Fifth, stop letting uncertainty humiliate you into emotional collapse. Uncertainty is not proof that you are lost. It is proof that precision now requires maturity. There is a difference. You stop spiraling. You stop outsourcing. You stop demanding that the world remain easy in order for you to remain effective. You get quieter, sharper, more honest, and let's say something even harder. A lot of people do not actually want resilience. They want reassurance. They want someone to tell them the systems are strong, the experts are in control, the technology is reliable, and the disruption is temporary. Why? Because reassurance lets them stay passive. Reassurance lets them avoid confronting their own softness. Reassurance lets them keep enjoying the fruits of strong systems without respecting what those systems demand underneath. But reassurance without readiness is sedation. That's called managed weakness. And managed weakness looks sophisticated right up until it breaks. Electronic warfare works so well psychologically because it attacks trust in the invisible. It tells you that what guided you can be manipulated. What looked precise can be distorted. What felt stable can be contested. And once that truth enters the room, the weak become reactive. They complain, they speculate, they dramatize, they become slaves to every interruption. The strong do something else. They return to fundamentals. That phrase matters. Return to fundamentals. Not because fundamentals are old-fashioned, but because fundamentals are what remain when the high-level systems get noisy. In navigation, in warfare, in leadership, in life, fundamentals are the stable layer beneath convenience, observation, verification, discipline, redundancy, patience, judgment, composure, timing, spatial awareness, clear communication. These things are not glamorous. That's why shallow people neglect them. But when the signal gets contested, fundamentals become dignity. That's called grounded competence. And grounded competence is one of the most masculine forms of self-respect there is. Not dominance, not aggression, not emotional theater. Grounded competence, the ability to stay useful under degraded conditions, the ability to keep orientation when external guidance stutters, the ability to think, decide, and move when conditions stop flattering you. That is strength without fantasy. So do this. Stop worshiping frictionless performance. Start training for degraded conditions. Do this. Stop assuming the tool will always save you. Start strengthening the judgment that uses the tool. Do this. Stop treating external guidance like identity. Start building internal direction. Do this. Stop panicking when certainty gets interrupted. Start slowing down enough to become accurate. Do this. Stop calling dependency sophistication. Start calling it what it is when it goes untested. Vulnerability. That sequence is not just advice. It is a standard. Because once you understand what GPS disruption really symbolizes, you cannot go back to childish thinking. You cannot keep living like orientation is guaranteed. You cannot keep building a life with no backups, no internal compass, no tolerance for friction, no respect for failure modes. You cannot keep demanding smoothness as if smoothness were a birthright. Life does not owe you an uninterrupted signal. War does not. Reality does not. And if you are wise, you stop demanding it. Instead, you become the kind of person who can still move when guidance is partial, who can still decide when the data is imperfect, who can still remain calm when the map stops flattering your need for certainty. That is what real maturity looks like. Not certainty all the time, stability under uncertainty. Do you understand how rare that is now? Most people are flooded with information and still have no orientation. They have 10 apps and no direction, constant guidance and no wisdom, endless updates and no groundedness. Which means the lesson here is not only military, it is civilizational. We are surrounded by tools that assist us so constantly that many people have forgotten the difference between being guided and being capable. And capability is everything. Capability is self-respect expressed through preparation. Capability is discipline expressed through repetition. Capability is humility expressed through backup. Capability is calm expressed through action. When electronic warfare disrupts GPS systems in the region, it is showing the world a law that has always been true. If your orientation can be hijacked, your power can be reduced without ever touching your body directly. That is a terrifying truth for the dependent. But for the disciplined, it becomes a call to strengthen the deeper layer. So strengthen it. Strengthen your mind so noise does not own it. Strengthen your habits so friction does not break them. Strengthen your standards so convenience does not seduce them. Strengthen your judgment so tools remain servants, not masters. Strengthen your internal compass so silence does not become collapse. You need that internal compass now more than ever, because the modern world is brilliant at providing guidance and terrible at building men who can survive without it. It gives directions faster than it builds discernment. It gives access faster than it builds wisdom. It gives assistance faster than it builds resilience. And then people wonder why disruption feels so personal. It feels personal because it reveals what you never built. Good. Then build it now. Do not be the man who only respects fundamentals after the signal fails. Do not be the person who only values discipline after convenience betrays them. Do not be the leader who only discovers redundancy after the system goes dark. See earlier. Build earlier. Harden earlier. That is what serious people do. And here is the reframe that frees you. Disruption is not just a threat, it is an instructor. It tells you where you were lazy. It tells you where you were spoiled by seamlessness. It tells you which assumptions were weak, which dependencies were excessive, which backups were fiction, which confidence was borrowed. If you are mature enough, you let the disruption educate you without humiliating you. You let it reveal what must be strengthened. You do not call that defeat. You call that calibration. That's called self-command. And self-command is what this whole thing is really about. Whether in a region under pressure, a command system under interference, or a man trying to build a life with real backbone, the question is the same. Who are you when the signal gets contested? Are you instantly lost, instantly emotional, instantly dependent on someone else telling you where north is? Or do you have enough structure, enough composure, enough internal order that even in degraded conditions you remain a force? That answer defines you more than comfort ever will. So no, this is not just electronic warfare. This is a confrontation with fragility, a confrontation with the illusion that precision is permanent and orientation can be outsourced without consequence. A confrontation with the truth that what supports you must be respected and what guides you must never become the sole foundation of your confidence. Build deeper than the signal. Stand deeper than the system. Know deeper than the interface. That is the move. And if nobody has told you this plainly, hear it now. You are not weak because the world is complicated. You are weak only if you keep using complexity as an excuse to remain dependent. You are not defeated because guidance gets disrupted. You are defeated when disruption reveals your emptiness and you refuse to train. You are not powerless because the map goes noisy. You are powerless when you never built the man who could still navigate without applause, without comfort, without constant external correction. Become that man. Become the person whose presence does not collapse when precision gets contested. Become the person who values truth over ease. Become the person who trains beyond ideal conditions. Become the person who does not need a perfect signal to hold a straight line. Become the person who can live in reality without begging fantasy to save him. That is your identity reset. You are not the glitch. You are not the confusion. You are not the panic spreading through weak systems. You are the recalibration. You are the discipline. You are the internal compass. You are the answer. Subscribe if you want more truth like this, more clarity that cuts through comfort, more reminders that real strength begins where borrowed certainty ends. And stay with this community if you are done with soft lies, done with dependency dressed up as sophistication, and ready to stand among people who would rather face reality, build depth, and become harder to shake.